Why isn't the global keyword needed to access a global variable? From my understanding, Python has a separate namespace for functions, so if I want to use a global variable in a function, I should probably use global. However, I was able to access a global variable even without global. Why does this work? See also unbound local error on local variable when reassigned after first use for the error that occurs when attempting to assign to the global variable without global. See using global variables in a function for the general question of how to use globals.
The keyword global is only useful to change or create global variables in a local context, although creating global variables is seldom considered a good solution. The above will give you While if you use the global statement, the variable will become available outside the scope of the function, effectively becoming a global variable. So the above code will give you. In addition, due to the nature of Python, you could also use global to declare functions, classes or other objects in a local context. Although I would advise against it since it causes nightmares if something goes wrong or needs debugging.
While you can access global variables without the global keyword, if you want to modify them you have to use the global keyword. For example, in your case, you're just accessing the list sub.
This is the difference between accessing the name and binding it within a scope. If you're just looking up a variable to read its value, you've got access to global as well as local scope. However, if you assign to a variable whose name isn't in local scope, you are binding that name into the scope, and if that name also exists as a global, you'll hide that. If you want to be able to assign to the global name, you need to tell the parser to use the global name rather than bind a new local name, which is what the global keyword does. Binding anywhere within a block causes the name everywhere in that block to become bound, which can cause some rather odd-looking consequences, for example unbound local error suddenly appearing in previously working code.
The other answers answer your question. Another important thing to know about names in Python is that they are either local or global on a per scope basis. Consider this, for example. You can probably guess that the value equals 0 statement will be assigning to a local variable and not affect the value of the same variable declared outside the doit function. You may be more surprised to discover that the code above won't run. The statement print value inside the function produces an unbound local error dot. The reason is that Python has noticed that, elsewhere in the function, you assign the name value, and also value is nowhere declared global. That makes it a local variable. But when you try to print it, the local name hasn't been defined yet. Python in this case does not fall back to looking for the name as a global variable, as some other languages do. Essentially, you cannot access a global variable if you have defined a local variable of the same name anywhere in the function.